today. As I said, once again, my name is Armando Acosta. The reason that we're here today is we want to help customers understand how to make big data easy and simple. As we know today, when you talk about big data and Hadoop, those words are synonymous. And what we're finding out today with Hadoop is that a lot of customers are starting to investigate the technology. They want to understand about the technology and really understand how it can help them, specifically for their data, their use case, and how they can make it happen. Now, when you look at data today, obviously we know that there's a lot of challenges with data today. We've constantly heard about the 3 V's of big data, but on top of that, really, what we're trying to understand is that no matter what industry customers are in, we are finding that whether they're in transportation, manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, that a lot of our customers are having issues with essentially processing data, managing data, essentially transforming that data, and then getting insights out of that data. So our goal here today is really to help you understand how our 4 companies together can come and help you out with this scenario, help you understand how we can get started with big data Hadoop, and really help you understand how you start off with that first use case to really define that use case so that you can essentially go do that use case, understand what you want to do with that use case, and then so you can show value with that use case. So before we get into the meat of the presentation today, I want to stop really quickly, and I want to help you understand who we are. So myself, my name is Armando Acosta, as I stated earlier. I work for Dell. I'm a subject matter expert for our big data solutions. My main role at Dell here is I'm a product manager, so I handle all our solutions from cradle to grave. My goal here is to really help customers understand how they can get value out of big data. I've been in the technology field for the last 17 years, and really, I'm really excited about being involved in big data. I've been involved in the last 3 years in big data. It's been a great learning experience for me, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. Now, next, what I'd like to do is just give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. We'll have 3 presenters joining me today: Sean Anderson, Brandon Drager, and Mark Muncy. Sean, why don't we go and get started with you, and if you could, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Armando. My name is Sean Anderson. I work for Cloudera, and I focus specifically on platform use cases for our Apache Hadoop distribution.
Brandon?
Hi, I'm Brandon Drager. I work at Intel, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Strategy for our Big Data Solutions Group.
And last but not least, Mr. Mark Muncy.
Hi, I'm Mark Muncy. I'm a Technical Product Marketing Manager for SyncSort, handling.
Excellent. Thank you for all our speakers introducing themselves. Now let me kind of just start off with, we want to start off with a polling question. And our polling question is, where are you today in your big data journey? So I'll give everybody a minute or so to respond to essentially where they're at in the big data journey. So a lot of responses here, good stuff. So far we have about 35 responses. It looks like we're pretty much at the top where a lot of the responses are showing that you're exploring big data. We have some that are getting started. We have 10 or so that are in production, and then we have 4 customers that are in the advanced bucket, which is really good. So it looks like we slowed down on results, and let me just go ahead and show the results here. So for our audience today, it seems like a majority of our audience, about close to 46%, are exploring big data. So good news here is you're on the right webcast. We'll show you how to, once you're exploring, really just how to get started and why it matters. For those of you getting started, we have a good use case here to show you why, how we can help you get started. And then for your advanced and in-production customers, we do want to share with you some advanced features that Cloudera has brought into their Hadoop distribution that will help you for those advanced customers. So thank you everybody for responding to the poll. Still getting more responses here, but for the sake of time, let me go and move forward. So first, really what we want to help you understand are, how many customers are using big data today. What we do here at Dell is we conduct a Dell Global Technology Index survey. We go and survey 3,000 of our customers, and really what we do is ask them a series of questions and really want to help understand where they're at today. And what we've seen here is that of our customers today, over 50% of our customers are looking at some form of big data project. So we know that the interest is there. More customers are investigating big data and Hadoop and trying to really understand, what it can do for them. Not only on top of that, of the customers that are using big data today, really what we're showing is that, those that understand the benefits of big data, that has grown from 39% to 42%. And those that know how to use big data have shown that, their bottom line is growing 50% faster. So what that tells us, with those customers that know how to use data, know how to leverage Hadoop, that's the goal for customers, is to understand their data, what does that data mean, and then come to some insight so they can take action and then obviously affect their bottom line. Now, when you look at big data, it's not easy. We do want to help you get there, but there are some challenges that you'll have to address in order to start your big data journey. What we've seen here at Dell is really it starts with IT and business alignment. If IT and business are not aligned, your Hadoop project will not be successful. So, our number one step here when, Dell, Intel, Cloudera, and SyncSource come to the table, we really want to help our customers understand what is the business objective, what is the use case, what do you want as your return on investment, what does the business want IT to do, how does IT expect to support the business. Make sure that those fundamental things are essentially, what everybody's expected of, what you want to go do, and that use case. If that use case is not defined, we find that a lot of these Hadoop big data projects do not get off the ground very well. So that's the first step, is determining the value and really understanding who does what and how the business wants to run and how IT is going to support them. The next step in the process is, as challenges that need to be addressed, is really understanding, what tools are you using today, and are those tools really going to be the most effective tools to get you to where you need to be with the use case. A lot of times when you look at data today, as I stated earlier in the presentation, you have this data that's coming at you. You have different types of data, different data sources. The data doesn't look alike. And so what we're finding today is that traditional tools are really not meeting the needs of what you need to do. And then on top of that, we want all our customers to focus on all their data. What we find today is that, when you look at customers and, how they've grown over the years, a lot of their data is siloed. And what I mean by that, each line of business has chosen a different tool. Each line of business processes data differently. They have a different operational model around the data. And really what that leads to is that data is being very siloed. And so our goal here at Dell, Cloudera, SyncSource, and Intel is really helping customers look at all their data and break down those data silos. And here's the reason why. If you break down all those data silos, you'll get everybody one single view of the world. And you'll want, people that are making business decisions to look at all types of data. If they're in finance and they want to make a financial decision, financial data is good, but it wouldn't really be good to look at product data, look at customer data, look at the, essentially social media data so you can understand what customers are saying about your product. And so with that, we want to help our customers address that holistically. When you look at big data, you do have to have different pieces starting all the way from infrastructure. You do have to have data management tools in place. You have to have data integration tools that help you integrate all those different data sources. And then on top of that, you have to have the analytics. You have to have the models and the algorithms to run on those data so that you can get the best result. And with Dell, we do offer our services. We do have security. Security is essentially, very important when you're looking at all sorts of data today. So we want to make sure that it's secure. And then on top of that, here at Dell, we do have partnerships. Obviously, we have our partnerships with Cloudera, SyncSource, Intel. We do Hadoop, but if you're looking at not only SQL databases, we have relationships there. If you're looking to augment, your traditional technologies like Oracle or SAP, we can do that. If you're looking to go into in-memory with SAP HANA, we have those partnerships as well. So the key message here is that we have a comprehensive portfolio. Our portfolio is modular and flexible, So you don't have to have every single piece from Dell. You can take the pieces you need, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's the Cloudera Hadoop distribution, whether you're looking to do data warehouse optimization, ETL offload. We have our partnership with SyncSort where we can help you out there as well. And then, of course, our partnership with Intel so that we have the best generations of products to give you the CPU processing power. And not only that, with Intel's intellectual property around what they're doing with analytics as well. So, before we get into, I'm going to hand this next set of slides over to Sean so he can go into details about Cloudera. But just to, set the tone for you here is we really want to, make, the conversation easier. When you look at big data and analytics, there's a lot of confusion out there. A lot of customers don't know where to get started. And so for us, really what we try to do is make it simple. Really starts with what type of data do you want to go and, data do you want to integrate? What do you want to do with that data as far as transforming that data? And the goal here is really, where does the data originate? Once you understand what data sources you want to, go and analyze, you want to integrate those data sources, you want to be able to aggregate that data, and then once again, you want to be able to transform that data to get it to a good ready state to be analyzed. And there's different tools of analysis out there, whether it's an analytical engine, whether you go into traditional business intelligence tools, whether you want to go into fast processing and in-memory computing, whether that be SAP HANA or Spark. We have all those different tools to help you get there. And last but not least, if you want to continue to use the enterprise data warehouse where you're tied to a query language or your business reporting, we can put the data right back there. So there we want to just, what I want to do today is just give you a basic fundamental of understanding how you get there, understanding the challenges that you need to address, helping you understand how Dell can help you out with that big data journey. Now with that, I'll turn it over to Sean so he can get into detail of what Cloudera is doing to help you out today.
Thanks, Armando, and great breakdown of kind of what you guys are seeing. I wanted to take a quick second to talk about some of the common trends that we're seeing, around getting started with optimizing your data warehouse environment, which is really the topic that we're talking about here today. And as our poll kind of indicated, many of you are just, starting to either explore augmenting your data warehouse or just getting started. So how do we help enable you to be successful in that journey? And I wanted to start out by just prefacing some of the things that we're seeing today, and hopefully, getting you to a better place and understanding where to go. So really a common thread that we're seeing across the board, either from polling our customers or just talking to them, is that insufficient workloads are costing our users money. When we talk about data warehouse space, the space is often very valuable. But as we open up more access to more users across the business, which a lot of companies seek to do to make analytics more pervasive around their organization, and as we implement new data sources and complex data sources like real-time, streaming, and like mutable data sources, those data warehouse resources become extremely constrained. And this can often result in drastically long reporting windows and just really letting the business down as far as getting that data in a form that's actionable. So you'll see some of the common causes of slowdown for data warehouses here: ETL breakdowns, additional pressures from ad hoc reporting, and query complexity. And some of the most common strategies to fix this include scaling your data warehouse environment to fit the need. That's often a pretty costly proposition. Or archiving it offline somewhere, which actually makes that data inaccessible for analysis. Another strategy is to combine that data, but then you actually lose the ability to go into full fidelity analysis of your data because all that data is aggregated. So a lot of people are looking to augment their data warehouse with a technology like Apache Hadoop. But even once they've identified that they need to augment their data warehouse or their database with Hadoop, it's often difficult to know where to begin. So let's take a look at kind of a common distribution that we see in a modern enterprise today, right? This is a fairly common breakdown of queries across the business. And this may be the culmination of anywhere up to 800,000 queries run per day. And this is pretty common. This is actually based on information that we gather from our customers, right? So ETL prep is usually done first to get the newest data into the mix to make sure we have that available for analysis. BI and reporting is then kind of done during business hours to make sure that the business has direct access to the data they need to kind of run their objectives. Possibly a little later in the day, some data discovery is done to understand what new queries to craft and how to move forward. And then often the more complex handwritten queries are run overnight, just to make sure that we're maximizing the utilization of all of our resources in terms of compute and processing. So how do we move from a model like we just saw before that's very spiky and seemingly unpredictable to some sort of normalized distribution with Hadoop, all while taking a step back and allowing ourselves an opportunity to optimize queries based on the best fit for Hadoop? If we're going to make a transformation to a new technology, let's also take the added benefit of using that time to make sure we're running the most optimized fashion. And we can do that by consolidating those ETL update flows. And another common thing is actually removing duplicated queries. And this is actually one of the most pervasive when we talk to our customers. Some current numbers show that somewhere up to 60% of the queries run in a modern business are actually redundant. So if we remove 60% of those redundant queries, then we've just basically freed up over 50% of our data warehouse to handle new data streams. So lots of good opportunities there. Really, if you're unfamiliar with Cloudera, we're a leading Hadoop distribution for inside the enterprise, trusted by a myriad of organizations to help make Hadoop fast, easy, and secure, with tools like Cloudera Impala that makes Hadoop extremely fast for analytical processing, tools like Cloudera Manager that make the complex nature of Hadoop very easy, and tools like Cloudera Navigator, which adds additional security, especially for sensitive data, that allow for things like governance, data lineage, and policy and access controls. And I'm really excited to announce that 2 weeks ago we launched a new tool called Navigator Optimizer. And this is the integration of a company called Explain.io that we acquired. And the new Cloudera Navigator Optimizer is actually a tool that sits in our already very popular Navigator platform to help you understand how to best get started. So Navigator Optimizer instantly gives you insight into the current query workload and offers you intelligent optimization guidance on how to fix that. So how can I reduce complexity? How can I identify duplication and get rid of it? But then on another level, how can I assess which queries are best and a best fit to move over to Hadoop, either due to it's very easy to move them over to Hadoop, or maybe they'll actually run in a more performant manner on Hadoop. And then even inside that, which tools inside the Hadoop ecosystem are best served to fit that specific type of query? Is it Impala? Is it batch processing through Hive? Could I benefit through something like Spark SQL? So what we're really trying to do here is give users the tools to understand where to get started to identify those queries to move over so they can reach a level of success faster. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brandon to take us a little bit further down the path.
Great, Sean. Thanks. And that was a great overview, in particular of why what's kind of the pressure points that are kind of adding to the existing stresses we already see on a lot of enterprises' data warehouse infrastructure and a lot of the tools that Cloudera is working on to help start getting down the path of getting past that. What I'd like to do next is just talk a little bit about some more of the, just how does this manifest itself? What are some of the metrics behind these pressures and how they're manifesting themselves, and talk a little bit more about operational use cases and why so many enterprises are really kind of going down that path first as they're starting their big data journey. So just to kind of put a finer point on kind of what Sean was talking about, all these stresses and pressures being placed on data warehouses are really resulting in some pretty concerning numbers, when it comes to data warehouse technology, which is, again, as Sean pointed out, oftentimes very costly and valuable resource within the enterprise. So what we're seeing is, Gartner's done a lot of research on this topic, and we're seeing that 70% of all data warehouses are already performance and capacity constrained. So just think about that. 70% of all those data warehouses out there are already kind of at that peak. And in addition, right, is everyone's really trying to get on this path to have more data-driven enterprises than they already have in the past. Those demands are just going to continue to increase. The other piece that's really kind of adding fuel to the fire is that there's pressure from all parts of the organization within the enterprise today. Business units are getting more actively involved in creating new data analytics projects. Whereas IT is often tasked with trying to do more with with their existing infrastructure and making sure that they're also meeting the needs that are coming across. So really, it's this TCO factor that kind of comes into play of how do I grow my infrastructure in a way that's efficient, but at the same time really meets all the needs of my customers, right? So if you take those two factors in consideration, then you look at what's driving that performance capacity constraint. 80% of the constraint is driven by these data integration and transformation workloads that are really eating into electronic data warehouse capacity overall. So this is why we're seeing a lot of folks going down the path of looking at how operationally they can optimize their data warehouse infrastructure. So it's really along the lines of how can we use new technology. So Hadoop has really kind of been the knight on a white horse, so to speak, in this regard for particularly these types of operational use cases, and that we're seeing a large portion of our customer base adopt data warehouse optimization, where they're offloading that ETL function that's consuming 80% of their data warehouse capability off onto Hadoop, which is obviously more efficient, more scalable, and more able to address kind of these newer and emerging data types and different sources of data across the enterprise. So if we kind of look ahead, that's the operational use cases are really kind of the key starting point where we see successful enterprises really starting and continuing their journey with big data, right? And this really speaks, if you go back and think about the TCO issue, right? TCO is, continues to be, I think, for like the last 2 or 3 years in a row. If you look at Gartner, you look at Capgemini and other surveys across the industry, showing TCO from data analytics, data management projects is really kind of the #1 obstacle challenge to broader adoption. It's really been a challenge for folks to really kind of surpass and get past that point. But the good news is with operational cases, it's really easy to draw a line between cost savings from a data warehouse offload as that relates to decreased spend on new infrastructure for data warehouse, and potentially more efficient spend on technologies like Hadoop. So we strongly encourage customers to really start on this operational efficiency path. I mean, we're all excited about the potential for data analytics, et cetera, and we all hear about kind of new use cases every day. But it's really these kind of meat and potatoes use cases, as I like to call them, that are really kind of paying the bills for those next step projects that are typically more advanced and a little more interesting that we hear about oftentimes in the news. So we often encourage folks starting with data warehouse acceleration, great use case to start with. Other use cases on the operational front that we encourage customers to look at is around log aggregation. So there's a variety of logs that are created by pretty much every device in your network, right? So really understanding application data logs, system event logs, et cetera, and looking for opportunities to aggregate that data and pull out new insights for patterns of inefficiencies or opportunities for eliminating reductions and the overhead, et cetera. The final piece kind of goes to what Armando was talking around, was around data pipeline modernization and really looking for opportunities to break down data silos across the enterprise, right? So this is kind of the next phase in the path of getting to that insight nirvana of being able to look at all your data across the enterprise. So using these new tools that will allow you to have kind of complete vision and use more of your data to extract insights from will really allow you to kind of take the next step along that path. So next I'll be turning it over to Mark, and he'll talk a bit more about SyncSource's role in kind of moving this new trend towards operational efficiency in the enterprise.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So taking a look at the numbers that you just presented, it was very clear to see how important a reference architecture like the one we're going to be providing for the industry is important to the industry. So it's kind of a good look into why we do what we do, and now we're going to look into how we do it. So traditionally, the old way of doing business intelligence was to extract all your data from all the data sources around your organization using whatever myriad of tools that are available to you at the time. And then you load it into your data warehouse, into some staging tables that are often siloed off from the rest of the data warehouse. And then you're actually going to be utilizing that enterprise data warehouse, storage, and processing to do the bulk of the ETL work. This is typically because ETL tools in the past that are very, very popular, and I'm not going to name names, were not able to actually perform the ETL operations at scale. So what they would do is push down into the database and require the database to actually perform the ETL work. Now obviously, this is extremely expensive to be asking a very expensive database to do all this work for you. And obviously bigger volumes, increased velocity, and a wider variety of data sources, this really becomes unsustainable for a lot of organizations. In the end also, people are clamoring for new analytics, and with all the new data that's coming in, it's impossible for organizations to actually do the analytics that are needed. So today, with the modern data pipeline, we're able to introduce Hadoop into the mix. Everyone's clearly easily seeing the benefits of it, especially for things like ETL workloads. There's promise to move the massive amounts of staged data and heavy processing off the enterprise data warehouse into Hadoop so that it can be cheaper, more manageable, and you're able to actually pull in more data for like longer archival. And then obviously, now that you have all that data stored in your enterprise data hub, you're able to do the in-depth hardcore analytics on it that your business so desperately needs. One of the things that we found though is out of the box, Hadoop has a few missing pieces from for the ETL workloads, and that's where SyncSort comes into the picture to be able to offer you a complete solution for Hadoop. With Dell, Cloudera, SyncSort, and Intel, we've put together that complete solution to make the migration very, very easy. SyncSort provides the tooling necessary to collect the data from all over around the organization, prepare and blend it with other data sources, including things like mainframe or NoSQL, transform it natively within Hadoop. And I find this piece a little bit important because the way that we contributed to the Apache ecosystem is that we are able to take our very highly optimized engine for transformation work and run it natively within Hadoop. And then obviously once you have your data transformed into a star schema or what have you, you can then load it into the enterprise data warehouse if you wish. Or we actually have connectivity for popular business intelligence tools like Qlik or Tableau that we're able to load into as well. And of course, since this is an enterprise solution, there's integrated support for things like security management or security and management such as Cloudera Navigator and Sentry. And then with this proven reference architecture by Dell, Cloudera, SyncSort, and Intel, the focus is actually on operational efficiency. So we can make every process run faster and better by shortening the timeline between your source data and being able to actually act on that data. I'm going to turn it back over to Armando in case you have anything to add to this slide.
No, great points here. And really our goal here at Dell is, we want to come in and give customers a point of view and help them understand how we can help you get there. A lot of times when we talk to customers, they hear, okay, there's this Hadoop thing, there's this SyncSort thing, okay, we've got Cloudera as a distribution, but the goal here is really to help them all put it together and not have them figure it out by themselves. And the goal here is through our partnership, that's what you're trying to do, is we're simplifying that. With Dell, you look at our reference architecture, our goal here is to simplify the design, the architecture, the configuration, what does the cluster look like, what are the settings on the servers, what is the network set up like that. Let Dell do that hard work for you. And then, on top of that, we add Cloudera's, Hadoop, distribution. And with Cloudera, we want to provide Cloudera Manager, Cloudera Navigator, all those enterprise, features that customers are looking for around security, access control lists. That's what Cloudera brings to the table. And then on top of that, when you look at, data warehouse optimization, ETL offload, we want to make that process simple. So that's why we bring SyncSort to the table, so that you don't have to go learn all that code. You don't have to learn MapReduce. You don't have to learn Pig, Hive, Scoop. SyncSort does all that hard work for you. And so our goal here is really to build an end-to-end solution and help you focus on that use case, so you don't have to do all that hard part, and you can focus just on your data and focus on your data transformation job so that you can get to that value very quickly. You can get up and running quickly. Let Dell, Cloudera, Intel, and SyncSort do all that upfront hardware for you so that you can focus on your data and get to that value quickly and show that value to your business so that you can continue to add more use cases to that first use case. Mark, with that, what I wanted to do is, we've actually gone over some studies. We've actually commissioned a study through Principal Technologies. And really through the study, what we're trying to showcase is if you do, this technology through Dell, Cloudera, Intel, and SyncSort, you will find value and you will be able to reduce cost. When we looked at this, when you look at, the ability to create ETL jobs, design those ETL jobs, deploy those quickly, we were able to really help you essentially, get the value out of it. So what we did within this study is we looked at, okay, do it the Dell, Cloudera, SyncSort, Intel way, or go build it on your own, go hire the expertise, go find those experts, which is really hard to do. And through that third-party study, we were really, able to show that if you do it our way and you look at the savings over 3 years, we're actually able to reduce and help you save 76% versus building it on your own and doing it on your own. So the value is truly there. We have the data points to back that up. Not only that, if you look at, is the performance going to be better than doing it inside the enterprise data warehouse? And the answer is yes. We did 3 different ETL jobs using our use case in our blueprint. And by doing that, if you look at just data validation and data processing, we were able to reduce that by 60%. If you look at a use case where you're looking at slowly changing dimensions, in fact, dimension loads, we were able to reduce that time by 17%. And then if you look at, looking at, offloading mainframe data, we were able to reduce that by 17%. So the goal here is that if you do use this technology, you will be able to do your work in a much faster amount of time. And not only that, you get to do this with an entry-level person. You don't have to have, that expert that knows Hadoop in and out, that knows ETL process in and out. The reason we want to simplify that is because those experts are hard to find, and not only that, those experts are very expensive. So for us, like I said, our goal here is time to value, make it faster, make the architecture easier to get set up. Let Cloudera help you out with the management of Hadoop. Let SyncSort help you out with the transformation jobs without having to learn all those new languages or new tools. And then, last but not least is, like I said, about reclaiming that valuable time. You use our tool and you want to design an ETL job with our solution without doing it yourself, you're going to be able to do that in less than 4 days. You try to do it on your own, that's going to take you almost 9 days to get that accomplished. And so the value here is, get it done faster, get it done quicker, get that time to value, get up and running quickly so that you can show that value to the business. And so what I like to do now is I want to ask, our panel, we have these experts on the line, so we want to pick their brains and, really get their perspective of, how they're seeing big data. So, what I'll do is I'll start with Sean. I'll pick on you first. So, Sean, big data is becoming this ubiquitous marketing term. What I really want to do is get your opinion. What does big data mean to you, and how do you see Cloudera approaching that problem?
Exactly, and for me personally, I think we spend as an industry a little bit too much time on the big aspect of it, the volume of the 3 V's there, when I think a lot of the really exciting innovations and success stories that we see inside our customer user base are all about leveraging new types of data, right? So higher velocity data like streaming data, fast changing data like time series data, were typically types of data that were left out of the analytics mix, right? And so there's a storage component of big data, which I think we're pretty far down the road of. A lot of people understand that Hadoop can provide them a very distributed framework in order to scale out their efforts. But how can we enable people to address a lot of these newer types of data that have very complex requirements when it comes to analytics, and help them be successful with that? And I think that Hadoop is uniquely positioned in that regard because it is an ecosystem-driven project. So as these new data formats become available, we can develop solutions in very short order to address those. And so that's really where Cloudera has their sights set on. It's how can we start enabling more data sources to be brought into the business to create a better view for analysis. So if a company is using 8 data points to create a customer profile inside their organization, how can we give them 20 to 30 to make that a much richer interaction? If they're trying to provide personalization, right, in marketing efforts, how can we create a situation to where we give them more granularity to be more relevant to their customers or to their channels or even operationally inside of their ecosystem?
Great. Hey, Mark, you want to add any commentary to that?
I think what Sean said is great. I find that big data definitely means different things to different organizations. One of the interesting things about SyncSort, and a lot of people don't know, is we've actually been around for 45 plus years. And we've been dealing with big data since big data was on the mainframe. And it's evolved throughout the decades. SyncSort has evolved throughout the decades. And really what it comes down to is big data is when traditional approaches no longer apply, basically, right? So you have to come up with new technologies and new strategies to deal with that big data. And our customers begin to identify data as big data once traditional approaches become inappropriate for those volumes and varieties of data that they're facing. So it's important to have this reference architecture with Dell, Cloudera, SyncSort, and Intel that give you all those things straight out of the box that help you deal with those challenges that are facing your organization today.
Great point, Mark. So I want to bring Brandon into the mix here. So Brandon, quickly, we hear organizations are still exploring, we're talking about it today with big data. As what you see today and as you talk to your customers, what advice can you give organizations to, determine where they get started with their big data journey?
Yeah, that's a great one, Armando. Like we had touched on a little bit earlier. I mean, really the key obstacle we see come up time and time again in these conversations we have with customers and surveys done by research institutions is really just kind of this notion around ROI, right? So it's most we're seeing the other kind of startling figure we really didn't get into today was about 2/3 of all big data or data analytics projects are currently not meeting the expectations of the management team. So that's a pretty low win rate by anyone's measure. So what we found is that that's directly tied to that ROI obstacle, is that oftentimes these projects are embarked upon without a clear kind of defined ROI, right, measure, what's the outcome expected and how do you measure the success of that outcome. So my advice really would be, start up front with kind of clear definition of what's the question that's being attempted to be answered. How do you know when you're finished? Is another really kind of basic but important one. And again, kind of going back to what we talked about here today, that the thing that kind of comes very clear is that we see a lot of enterprises get interested in in data analytics and big data to really kind of solve these kind of very heady big sexy problems that we all like to talk about. But the net of it is you've got to start somewhere, and really these operational use cases are a great place to start. They show value from the get-go. They're easier to measure, and they really build a good foundation to build upon, to add on to over time to build out those more those more advanced use cases that we all like to talk about.
Yeah, great points you made there, Brandon. And I want to do actually a follow-up question with you because, a lot of customers today don't know what Intel's doing to engage the ecosystem. And, you've been a great partner of ours for, a lot of years now, but, a lot of them don't know what you're doing to enable Hadoop, make it more enterprise ready. So can you just, comment, give us a couple of points of what Intel's doing to engage the ecosystem?
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Yeah, so Intel has traditionally been kind of in this enabler role. We create technology, but we're also our path to delivering that is through making sure we've got a very strong ecosystem supporting the technologies that we're creating. And that really kind of comes on two fronts, right? So there's certainly kind of a commercial aspect to it, but there's also kind of a developer and an open source aspect. So I'll start with the latter first. So Intel, most folks may not realize that there's over 10,000 software developers that work at Intel. And those are, kind of a broad span, right? A lot of those folks are doing kind of lower level, firmware and RTL type coding, but a lot of those folks are doing ecosystem type contributions. So working on, optimizations for Java, working on core contributions to Hadoop projects as, part of our collaboration with Cloudera. So there's kind of this very strong, kind of software and developer engagement that's happening. We also I would include things like software development tools, et cetera, that enable developers to expose a lot of the hooks and kind of optimizations we put into Intel architecture to now enable their applications or analytics projects to be more optimized for either performance or security. And then on that, again, build on a security topic, there's that huge area of contribution we're jointly embarked upon with Cloudera around Project Rhino. So that's really kind of aimed at building out these capabilities for unified authorization and encryption key and kind of optimizations around encryption, et cetera, to really ensure that data security and security in general are approached in kind of a really holistic and layered manner to ensure that customers can fully adopt big data. And then on the commercial front, it's really kind of, again, that historical Intel approach. We've done some things quite differently in regards to our relationship with Cloudera. It's very strategic and unique in its nature. It's kind of a first for Intel to effectively kind of pick a winner in any kind of technology space, and we really feel like we've done that with Cloudera based on kind of our joint shared vision around Hadoop's place in the enterprise and kind of what we're jointly working on together. So in partnership with Cloudera and others within very broad ecosystem, really working to ensure that a lot of these open source technologies in particular have kind of the faith and backing, right, to the point where vendors will integrate with them, right? So they don't want to necessarily go off and kind of scratch their head and maybe integrate with 3 or 4 different competing technologies or potential standards that solve the same problem. But if we can show that there's backing from Intel and the broader industry and partners like Cloudera, it increases that level of confidence that they know that technology has a lot of wood behind the arrow, so to speak, and that it's going to be one that they can adopt confidently.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Now, Mark, I want to give you a chance to interject here. Can you tell us what SyncSourt's doing to engage the ecosystem? Because a lot of people don't know that SyncSort is contributing to Hadoop and so on.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Whenever you think of larger companies who sell software, you don't think of them to be actually open source contributors. But I saw a study recently that we're actually a top 10 contributor to the Apache Hadoop ecosystem. And some of those examples would be our contributions to MapReduce, for example, or to Scoop to allow our customers to pull mainframe data. So we're actually open sourcing our mainframe expertise out into Scoop and Spark to being able to pull in that data set into Hadoop, which kind of lends to a very big iron to big data type approach. And we're very, very big into these kinds of partnerships with the industry leaders to be able to make sure that the ecosystem is running smoothly. And another way that this actually benefits everyone as a whole is because of these contributions and our unique architecture. We have a true native integration, so we're not a product that's going to be relying on code generation that has to be updated every time a new release comes out. We actually execute directly within Yarn, MapReduce, Spark, and this unique integration actually gave us the benefit of, one example would be Cloudera Manager. We were able to have support for Cloudera Manager within 8 days of release. And I think one of our competitors tried to get Cloudera Manager to be supported, and it took them somewhere in the range of 3 to 6 months. So that 8 days really gave us a heads up because of our contributions to the ecosystem.
Great points, Mark. So I want to stop right there, and I actually want to get to some of the questions that have been submitted in the chat window. And Sean, actually, it looks like you piqued a lot of interest with optimizers. So One of the questions that came in, Sean, is how can you reduce 50 to 60% of the common use queries in the data warehouse?
Yeah, and so a little clarification there, right? So a lot of commonality we saw in conversation with customers is that duplication is pretty rampant. So let's just talk about the life cycle of an employee, right, or a team, a data team, right? So an employee may come in and write a bunch of queries to run the business. That employee leaves the organization or perhaps is promoted to another role, and then somebody else comes in, right? And either they are using, they don't have the right views and access to understand what queries are running currently, so they duplicate those queries. And we've seen up to 60% duplicated queries, right? So these are consuming processing resources. They're consuming a lot of valuable space that if we were able to optimize, we could potentially free up that space. So if 60% of those queries are duplicated and we identify them and we remove them in the mix because they're no longer valuable to the business, then we freed up that 60 or 70%. And it's not always going to be 60%. Maybe it's 20% or maybe it's 10%. However, if we can do that, it really helps us understand, are the right queries running to fulfill the downstream business needs.
All right, thanks for clearing that up, Sean. One more. The other question we got around Optimizer is there any awareness of queries to the enterprise data warehouse outside the Hadoop ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great question. I should have clarified that earlier. So Navigator Optimizer is actually a SaaS product. So it lives outside of the Hadoop ecosystem. So it can be implemented in a data warehouse or in a database environment. It can analyze that database environment and provide a view or a pane into the queries that are running. Inside of that, it makes some intelligent guidance on how I can move those queries over, even up to understanding, okay, your query looks like this in terms of code in your RDBMS today. This is what it would look like in Hive. You only have to change 2 commas or one bracket in the line of code, right? So for a developer, that's a very easy transition. I can move that over to Hadoop with seemingly no additional development work. And since components of Hadoop, like Hive, like Impala, are close to SQL but not always identical to SQL, it's important to understand how much development work it will take to move those queries over. So Navigator Optimizer lives outside of that environment, but is tightly integrated into components like Navigator Optimizer to ensure that the congruency of the workload is kind of kept intact.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Thank you for clearing that up. And actually, this question is for Mark. So we got a question on how do you handle slowly changing dimensions? Are there set workflows or process flows used to provide consistency, ensure that they are handled consistently by any developer?
Absolutely. So one of the big things that we were focusing on, and it kind of goes in line with the reference architecture that we're providing, is that we actually have modules and templates available for everyone who uses our product to be able to handle common ETL tasks. And one of those is obviously slowly changing dimensions, type 1, type 2, what have you. So those are actually provided to you with the product. So any developer that uses it will have access to those templates and will be able to provide the way to do the slowly changing dimensions in a very similar way across your organization.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Now, we're having more questions around the ETL process and the different data sets. I quickly mentioned it, how SyncSort makes it simple, but can you, give us some more detail around Silk? I know that's a unique tool that SyncSort brings to the table, and I think that's really kind of the secret sauce that helps, somebody with entry-level skill sets start playing with ETL, SyncSort, and, running in Hadoop. Can you give us some more detail around that?
I'm glad you asked that, Armando. Actually, it's actually a great tie-in with what Sean was talking about with Cloudera and Navigator Optimizer. What it actually will do is take the queries that Optimizer has found and give you a detailed graphical view into what that query is actually trying to do. So if, let's say, you have a query that has 3 joins, an aggregation, and 2 summation fields, that will show up in the graphical dialog that you can actually take, either understand it visually because the person who wrote the query originally left the company and they don't want to tell you what their secret sauce was when they created that query, or you can actually click a button and have that generate a job inside of Hadoop with DMXH that can run inside of MapReduce. And I think that is the missing key or the missing link for easily transitioning workloads from the enterprise data warehouse to Hadoop. And I think that's one of the really, really nice things about this partnership is that Cloudera provides the exploration piece, the piece of where you're trying to figure out which queries you want to move over, and SyncSort provides the technology to help you move it over into Hadoop.
Yeah, and great points there. And I'll add to that, that's one of the big reasons that we wanted to partner with SyncSort and, Cloudera is because we value all the technology that they're bringing to the table. We value how they're making it easier for customers to, get started with Hadoop, to, get ETL jobs running natively in Hadoop. And so for us, kind of the light bulb turned on for me when I was planning out this product and understanding that first use case and say, okay, the goal here is really to try to make it simple for customers. Like I said earlier, get that time to value quickly. And, with the tools that Cloudera provides and SyncSort and, the security features that Intel bring to the table, really that's our goal here. Like I said, the name of the webcast is making big data simple, and, that's our goal here. Now, not all Hadoop use cases are simple, but, if you come and talk to us and utilize our expertise, we're more than happy to get you started down that journey. One final question I want to take before we end the webcast today is, the big question is big data the natural evolution of how data management and better ways to analyze information that give you more value for the organization? So with that, I'll let Sean. Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to go and take that one?
Yeah, no, I think we can kick it off. I think that's pretty spot on, right? So the real ROI in our data is how can we translate that into insights that power our business? How can we start to level up our organization to some of these leviathans that we see in new services and application that have used data from day one, right? And so we all pay to store data, whether it's on a storage system or on an architecture, right? And it really takes all the pieces and all the roles from the people in this conversation. So do we have the right reference architecture to ensure we're getting that great ROI? Do we have the right tools to make sure that we can open up analysis to more people inside the business, whether they're graphical tools, whether they're command line tools, whether they're programming languages, right? All of those things essentially kind of help us give more users access to data to open up that kind of domain of the few to a larger audience. And that's where we really start to see widespread modernization and benefits inside of modern day organizations materialize. And then they're able to not only get some ROI by operationalizing their systems, but create better products and services for their customers.
Yeah, great point, Sean. And I'll add my 2 cents here too. We're actually using big data technologies inside of Dell today. We are using the Cloudera distribution, and what we say here at Dell, we are drinking our own champagne. So not only are we coming and telling you how to go reach these operational efficiencies, we're doing the same thing. We use Cloudera within our organization. We're using Cloudera to go through, build 360 views of our customers. We're using, Cloudera to help and understand how customers go through our website. What do they click on? What materials do they look at? So for us, we do see the value internally here at Dell, and for us, it's really making a huge difference where not only is it giving us, our BI teams, faster access to their data, but it's also giving them new insights and the ability to look at new data sources that we've never been able to address before. So we've seen a lot of goodness on our side. We're using it to better our business and to bring cost savings so that we can go do bigger and better things and grow new insights for our business as well. So that takes us to the top of the hour. If you would like more information, please go visit Dell.com Hadoop. If you do have questions, we do have an email address where you can send us questions at hadoop@dell.com. Please, if you have any questions, we weren't able to answer all the questions today. But like I said earlier, if we didn't get to your question, we will send you an email and help you answer those questions. So I'd really like to take today and take the time to thank Sean, Brandon, and Mark for their expertise and sharing that expertise with us. And thank you for everybody that attended today. Like I said, this webinar will be available after we get it broadcast. The slides will be available as well. And with that, I want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate it, and have a good day. Thank you.